Hello there, vinyl community and YouTube. Another sunny and warm day here in Sweden. What a summer we've been having this year. Really good in some forms, not all that good in others, as we have a whole lot of fires and wood fires out in the country. Laying here at the balcony. There's a thread going on where Cloudy Miller started it. I'm not subscribing to him, so I haven't watched all that much from his videos, but I discovered the thread through James Griffith, and I watched also Mr. Majo's response about certain rules or guidelines when we're buying records, and why not jump on the train and do my own responding, because of course even I also have my certain rules or guides when I'm buying records. Let's go on first with the thing that concerns everybody that collects records: the quality. I'm not all that hard when it comes to quality. Maybe because I collect mostly for the music, and as long as you can play it and it's a good music, I'm okay with that. But of course, if there are a lot of scratches that affects the sound, I don't buy it. But if it is a few minor scratches that doesn't you can't hear actually, then I can actually buy it, and then those rings on the sleeve don't bother me all that much. But I also have the respect for people who don't want one scratch or a perfectly perfect record sleeve. But for my sake, I can handle if it is a few minor scratches that don't affect the listening experience. But there are other stuff that I have said no to. There are certain labels that I don't ever want to have in my collection. And then of course, in every rule there are bound to be exceptions to the rule, especially when you're a record collector, and it also comes with the certain labels that I don't want to have. You buy it and don't realize that it is this label. It might be a sub-label to the label that you don't want to have, and you don't realize that. But on certain, I've said it before, on certain CDs it is a label which says MCPS. Now I haven't yet to get an explanation what that really is. MCPS is normally in Great Britain the same organization as we have that called STIM, that sees after the rights for artists and songs and like that. But I can see why they would have a record label. And these MCPS records are horrible, because in many cases they contains the right information. The sound on the records are really, really horrible, and you also have sometimes the wrong stuff on the record, that's than other stuff on the record than what's been promised in the sleeve. When it comes to jazz, normally it doesn't say anything about who's playing or so, other than the main artist. So I hate MCPS, and also like concert hall, which I think have a plastic and horrible sound. and of course Music for Pleasure, all this low budget. Now when it comes to jazz, there are a whole lot of low budget labels, but many of them are really, really good and actually releases some really good stuff that haven't been released before. But there are also some low budget that are really extremely low budget that aren't worth collecting, as I normally call them, low budget deluxe. When it comes to compilations, and I mean compilations, I mean musical compilation, like now that what I call music, and with different kind of artists with one song, and those kind of collections. I don't buy them if it isn't a genre collection that with songs that I don't have specific genres. I have some 80s house collections with artists that I barely never heard of. I have some big beat collections from the 90s with songs that I never heard of. If it is a specific genre, yes, I can accept that. But normally, no, I don't like these kind of greatest hits albums from what was released and what was hit in the summer of 1992 or something like that. It doesn't interest me. I don't have the space for it. And if I have these songs already on one artist's original album or single, I can see any reason why I would have a compilation with other artists also on the same album. Prices, always an interesting subject. I do have limits, as I'm not all that rich person. Normally I don't pay more than around $10, $12, $13 for an album. I don't know, maybe some great stuff that are released that is a whole lot expensive, that would be interesting, of course, but I'm not a very rich person, and I don't know, it's something that's stuck in me, that there are a limit for what I want to pay for a record. And that also goes with thrift store albums, maybe even more. There are a whole lot of, now when the vinyl is back, there are a whole lot of thrift stores and flea market owners that think they're actually owning a really record store because they have some vinyls, and think that they can get $3, $4, $5 for an album, even if it is just flea market garbage. And normal for me is that a thrift store album is $1 or at highest $2, if it isn't something really, really special, of course. But I won't buy, even if it is a record that I actually want, but I know that it is on each and every flea market. I won't buy it for $4 because it isn't worth it. It is overpriced, and the same goes with 7-inch singles. So I do have my limits when it comes to price, and mostly it is about that I buy a lot at thrift stores and flea markets, and there are limits for what they actually are worth, especially when it comes to how many of them there are in thrift stores around the city. Hammond records, Hammond organ records. I bought a whole lot when I started Vinyl Community. As you may remember, I showed Hammond records every here and there. I have cut down a bit on Hammond organ albums, not because I don't like them, but because I feel like I have a little too many of them, of certain unknown organists that I have never seen or heard then from again, and I feel like I want to concentrate on certain organists. So I have cut down on buying Hammond records until I find specific organists like Nils Tibor, Steff Meder, and so on, Chris Nelson. And I never buy Hammond organ albums with German Klaus Wunderlich. I think his recordings and organ sounds are horrible. And Swedish Nils Dacke, whose Hammond pop albums are horrible. Upgrading albums, buying albums that you already have. When I was younger, I did, of course, a whole lot of cassette copying. I know, I'm a bad man, but several of those cassettes were even at that time not in the best shape. So those I tried to buy again. But other than that, I try not to buy albums that I already have. Even if it means that it is, I have to compare a vinyl version to a cassette version. I know a vinyl version, of course, looks better, but if I have an original cassette version, I feel like I don't want to waste money when I'm not a very rich person. On buying something that I already have. I want to buy music that I actually don't have, that I can experience new music all the time. I think that is much more important than buying stuff that you already have. But of course, if you have a horrible copy, I have albums that looks pretty horrible that I feel like now I want something that looks really much better. It's another story, but I won't buy something that I have already on CD and buy it again on vinyl. I can't see that happening. I want to waste time and money on stuff that I actually don't have, and discover new music in first hand. James Griffith touched a very important subject. That is buy stuff because it's happened to be popular. I buy stuff because I like the music, and I want to have it, not because necessarily that it is popular and everybody else has it. I never cared for that. I never actually have bought an album because a review in the magazine says 5 out of 5 points of an album, and then I gotta have it because the journalist says so. I buy it because I like it, or if I get a tip on vinyl community that makes me curious. Of course, I have checked that out on YouTube first. But I couldn't care less if Bob Dylan in Bob Dylan's 60s albums. I couldn't care less about Rolling Stones or The Who, because that's not my music, and I don't feel like I want to buy that just because it happens to be albums that are worth a lot and that everybody likes. I want to buy stuff that I am interested in. Then of course I can say if my musical tastes changed through the years, but I don't buy 12 inches. There are of course exceptions with that also, if it is a song that I really wanted to have for so long, and I only have found it on 12 inch. Of course I make an exception, but normally I don't buy 12 inches because they normally contains these kind of super funky, really ecstatic, mega blasting, funky, dance to the music, super mega mix, where nothing on the song sounds like the original version. It's just some kind of a loops and scratches, and maybe you can find a sample from the original song, but that's it. So I want the song, so I prefer 7 inches. Uh, Coming back again to low budget labels, many low budget labels, as I said, doesn't have information about artists and which play and when there is the recordings are made. I don't normally buy records where that doesn't say. I want information about which year this album is made, which musicians that plays on the jazz album. It is some information that I feel is very important. And as I said, normally it is really low budget labels that releases stuff without that information, and normally those records also doesn't contain anything of interest. So I don't buy that. I want information when I buy jazz records about who is playing and when it was released and when it was recorded. Total blind buys I have cut down on. I made a promise with that in front of the camera last winter in my goals. I don't buy still total blind buys. At least I YouTube. If I see an album that makes me interested, and I feel like might be interesting, I at least try to YouTube some song from the album to check out what it actually is. To do complete blind buy when it comes to full-length albums, I don't do it because I don't feel like I have the time to sit and listen through artists that I have no idea what it is, and I don't have place or it takes too much time of calling if it is crap and sitting and trying to listen what it is. I have enough to listen to albums that I actually know what it is, and that I feel is worth my attention because I like it. I don't normally buy compilations with the most ordinary jazz musicians. There are so many, the best of Benny Goodman, the best of Tommy Dorsey, and so on, and they all contains the same songs over and over again. I mean, there are tons of Tommy Dorsey's orchestra that contains Song of India, Opus 1, or Benny Goodman, Let's Dance, Sing, 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 and The Angels Sing. Heard those over and over. I don't deny they're great songs, but I don't need them on each and every album I buy with those artists. So when it comes to many of the big band artists, or many of the jazz artists, I try actually to buy stuff that are a bit different. Radio recordings, live recordings, or unusual, previously unreleased stuff. Are much more interesting to buy actually when it comes to these artists. And I don't buy Glenn Miller if it isn't something live recordings, radio recordings, certain radio recordings. I like these I Sustain the Wings recordings. They're live recordings that actually are great, but normally I don't buy Glenn Miller, that I feel is a little jazz light for me, and also a musician that is way overplayed that I'm a bit fed up with. I had the same feeling with Duke Ellington previously, but I've gotten some kind of a new respect for Duke Ellington, much because of certain special albums with different kind of theme albums that he has released with orchestral works that really are great. So I've gotten, and his solo albums with him, trio albums with him that are really great. So I've gotten a new respect for Duke Ellington. But Glenn Miller, no, never. And then of course it is other guidelines that I can't think of right now. Of course there are always exceptions to the rule. you never know what you're going to run into. It's easy to sit here and say, I won't do that, I won't do that, I won't do that, and then you run into an album that you actually really want, and it is under these circumstances that you promise that you will not do. Then of course, I guess we all have to make exceptions. But one exception for me that I won't give into is that I collect for the music mainly, and I want to have new music to explore, and I want to have it in a physical format. So with that, I hope that you're satisfied with my rambling. Now let's go out in the sun and have some good time. Take care, everybody. I think it's time to do another part of my Uppsala videos. My Jorgen on the move in Uppsala made about a week ago. So take care, everybody, in the summer, and see ya.